Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name's Arthur Robert. I'm the town's assistant town administrator for operations. Appreciate you making time available to us tonight for next step that we're taking in putting together an economic development strategic plan for the town. I'm just going to skip up a bit further. This is our I think third opportunity to engage with the community in different forms. Early in October, we had a chance to sit down with about 25 business leaders from the square and other parts of town. At the end of October, we had a community open session just to talk to people about the potential for growth in Hingham and to get some initial feedback. Tonight, we're really on our third step, where we hope to do a couple of things. Share a little bit of what we've learned about potential for new economic growth in Hingham, thinking about where we are post-COVID, and get some feedback from the community here in person, folks who are online, as well as from the community going forward over the next couple of weeks, next week or so, using an online survey tool. With all that information, we're working towards putting together a plan that will help focus our staff's limited time and bandwidth and resources towards addressing economic growth here in Hingham. I just got a couple of slides. Some of you may have seen some of this before. Where we are today is a little bit of a different place from years past in terms of promoting economic development, not just in Hingham, but in really in many communities nationwide. And I offer this just because these the changes in the economic development landscape that have been part enabled by technology, in part pushed forward by the COVID-19 pandemic, put communities like ours in a different place. And if pursuing new growth opportunities going forward matters, we have to understand the landscape, use that to build a framework to move forward. I've got a slide here that speaks to some of the basics that are out there, and to some extent how it's affected us in Hingham as well as the South Shore region. COVID-19 accelerated many trends that have been evolving in the workplace and have had some important impacts on suburban communities. And not most of this, I'm sure by now, is something that you're aware of either through personal experience or knowing others. With technology, it's possible to work anywhere, and that means places. The dominance of place has changed as a result. In all this change, because people can work, in many cases, work anywhere, there's a reduced demand for office space, and the demand that exists has changed. There's been what you could call a flight to quality in many respects, where Class A office with a lot of amenities to help draw and keep your best employees in place has become more important, and placing your best people in the best locations to get the most productivity from them also matters. That's why in some cases, I should say many cases you see in Massachusetts, but some industries cluster together to take advantage of proximity in different ways. Proximity to educational institutions, proximity to other businesses that are in the same kind of work for collaboration opportunities to share workforces. And all of that has really driven some changes that we have seen here locally. And a great example is a company called EMD Serono. You're probably aware of them, based in a building that's split between Rockland and Hingham. About a year ago, they announced their plans to change their mode of business, to change their operations here in Massachusetts, moving 400 plus employees from that location to two different locations. One is a location in the seaport to take advantage of the growing life sciences sector there. In the balance, they sent home. They're working from home. That creates a hole for us that we have to figure out how to fill, and it's an example of the challenge that we face. From previous work, I think many people are aware of some of the larger challenges Hingham faces. We've got infrastructure challenges with regard to water and wastewater, and not having access to a lot of either bears significantly on the types and the amount of development we can even consider. And as you know, the cost of housing is high, not just in Hingham, but across eastern Massachusetts. It makes it harder to attract and maintain strong workforce, or workforce that can live here and work here. And as industries evolve, workforce skills change, and there's often a mismatch between the jobs that are available and people who are living in a particular area. And last but not least, a piece that matters, and I want to mention, the landscape has changed, but it isn't all negative. That's not what I want to stress here. And that is, when we think about South Hingham, particularly the Route 3 and Route 228 area, it's a land mass that's shared by two communities, Hingham and Rockland. We have a shared interest in seeing sustainable development in that combined space, and we're looking for ways to work together. And towards that end, Hingham and Rockland are collaborating on this work with the goal of not just sharing the information, but ultimately, sharing a path forward. So maybe I should have started with this and just answer the question, where is this coming from? Why are people talking about economic development now? Why have I been asked to get directly involved in this? And it's not a new story. It's something that I think the community's had some interest in some time, but the importance has come into focus in more recent years. Just looking to the past, the recent past, the town has completed two different kinds of important work. First and foremost, the creation of a new master plan completed in 2021. A monumental effort, great credit to the planning board and Emily Wentworth, our community development director, in terms of putting that together. That document provides a roadmap for Hingham's overall development, looking years into the future, and articulates many goals. And two of them matter, I think, when we think about development going forward. And the first is the first goal in the master plan. That is to honor the town's character. Hingham is a unique place. Having spent some time here and having worked in many other communities, I can fully appreciate what makes Hingham special. And there are a lot of things to that, but certainly how the town's character has been protected and nurtured over many years is something that's important. It's unique. No matter what happens going forward, that strength has to be built upon and protected. Another goal in the master plan speaks to supporting a vibrant and resilient economy, supporting local enterprises, attracting new ones, attracting non-residential and mixed-use development to desired locations. This has been talked about in the past. A lot of effort has been invested and some progress has been made, and there may be opportunities going forward. Tied to this long-term vision for the town are some important financial realities that the town has to work through going forward. Without getting into a lot of detail, we know that in preparation for the override vote that took place in 2024, the town administrator convened a task force to look very carefully at the town's revenues and expenses, and found, this is providing very basic high-level summary here, that over the long term, town expenses are growing faster than revenue. I think we all experience that just managing our own home budgets and seeing how costs are growing and the challenges we all have in managing the cost growth. Among many different options for raising revenue for the town, this task force identified economic development as offering over the long term, a high potential new revenue impact. So with that in mind, the select board this year, in putting together its goals for the current year, starting in July 2024, was articulating the goal of promoting economic development. So we are here tonight to begin defining exactly how that can work. Now, what I want to do, without taking much more time here, is just point out where we stand as a community financially. As you're probably aware, we prepare a financial forecast as part of the budget development, and we go through many iterations of putting that forecast together as we move to close and finalize a budget that must be balanced. What I've got up here on the screen is the town's most recent and final forecast, completed in FY 24, looking years into the future. And I want to point out a couple of things. And there are a lot of lines here, and there's a lot to consider, and I'm not here to engage or conduct like a full-blown municipal finance class. But important, when you, like any operation, there are sources and uses of resources. On the sources side, you can see that there are many different rows that identify different types of funding that become available to the town. Revenues, I've got one highlighted line that just shows new growth with actuals from FY 23, estimates for FY 24, but then forecasts 5 years forward. You'll see that these numbers are relatively stable. The FY 23 actual was 763,000 rounded. The forecast for FY 25 is 740,000 rounded. The forecast for FY 27 is 650,000 rounded. Looking 10 plus years back, these numbers in many years have been larger and driven by some of the developments that have been carefully planned, pursued, constructed, and closed here in Hingham. What we don't have right now is a significant project pipeline. As a result, at this time, we're projecting relatively low new growth figures or values. If you look to the bottom of the same sheet, this is the cover sheet of our 5-year forecast. You just get down to the bottom line where we're looking at excess to shortfall. Now, based on the override, we projected a substantial excess in FY 23. For the forecast for FY 25, our current fiscal year, at that point, we projected a balanced budget. Looking forward to FY 27, we're projecting a potential shortfall of $3.2 million, and then out to 29 in the range of 6.3 million. Now, it's to be clear, these numbers change, and over time, some of these can be dealt with in different ways and managed to a certain extent. But what it does show is that if our expenses are growing faster than revenues over time, that gap gets bigger, and it's a significant challenge, and it poses some basic questions for the town moving forward. What we are hoping is that if we can get to consensus about the types of economic development to pursue in different parts of town, and we'll get into that a little bit more of that shortly, we can develop a path forward that can address what it will take to make things real. So what I'll do is a stop. I'll step back and I'll ask our consulting team to step up and take the lead. And I just want to welcome Alex Tranmer and Tom Dvoretsky from Comoy Associates just to help us move forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Art. Well, hi, everyone. I know I've got some familiar faces, but for those of you who don't know me, I am Alex Tranmer with Comoy Associates, and we've been working with the town for about 6 months or so now at this point on a lot of what Art was just describing, so we can get right into this conversation. What we're gonna do tonight is a little bit of presentation and a little bit of interaction engagement. We've got some data and things to report out, but I know we've got quite a few folks online as well. It looks like 17 or so, so we've got some engagement and some tools that we can use to do that. For folks that are online, we will check in periodically for questions and things, and Emily, just give me a little hands up if we need to answer anything there. Big picture tonight, we do want to talk about some of the market analysis data, which Tom is going to help us through. We're going to talk through and hear from all of you, including folks online, about your take on the potential or desirability of certain types of development, and then talk about really what that means in each of those areas. One thing that I do like to start off with, though, when we talk about economic development, that means a lot of different things to different people. Of course, you know, we consider jobs and investment. Those are economic development. Those are sort of your classic traditional economic development indicators. But at Coin Associates and how Tom and myself and really economic development as a whole, I would say, is moving towards this much more holistic viewpoint of economic development. So we're considering things, you know, ranging from infrastructure and sites to housing, to quality of life elements, to workforce, of course, entrepreneurship, to those small businesses that, you know, we all love in our communities. So economic development, you know, I know can sometimes be an abstract kind of thing. So when we say, you know, we're working on business retention and expansion, well, what might that lead to? You know, you might hope, right, that that results in a strong small business community that leaves the community itself thriving. Or if you focus on investing in those quality of life elements, maybe you've got some cultural events, you've got some arts, you're celebrating Hingham's heritage. Or if you're investing in entrepreneurship, maybe you're generating some new ideas in a co-working space or a new incubator that's been invested in, and that's spilling out into the community. And right, there's many examples, but right, we're hoping to fill vacant storefronts and hoping to make investments in infrastructure so that we all get around efficiently and can access the businesses throughout the town. So of course, economic development covers many different things, but I do just like to lay out that as Art is giving this introduction and saying, you know, the role of economic development in the town, there's plenty of different ways that that might come to be. Art already gave a bit of a background on this, but in terms of the economic development plan overall, we have taken sort of a two-pronged approach. So we've got our data, we've got our analysis that's telling us historic data, current data, and looking into the future even. And then, of course, we've got our engagement through several different rounds, online, in person, to really gather that in-person real-time information. And then lastly, putting that all together for the town to be able to use as a roadmap to act, to bring to fruition some of the things that we're talking about here tonight. So while some of what we're talking about the town overall in a lot of instances, however, we do have 3 distinct districts that we are looking at, because when we talk about market and development opportunities, those really are unique to certain geographies, even within the town of Hingham. So our 3 areas, and we've got bigger pictures of these, so let's see. Okay, so South Hingham, North Rockland. So we are doing this in partnership with Rockland. So you see a little bit of the Rockland border there, but when we talk about South Hingham, North Rockland, we're talking about the area adjacent to Route 3. This is going to include your industrial park, Derby Street, the shops there, the Blue Cross Blue Shield campus, and then again, the north part of Rockland. So just sort of to orient where we are when we talk about this area, because I am going to have you make certain comments just on this one particular area. Second one is the shipyard. This is obviously front. So on the most eastern side, you're gonna have your CBS all the way down to the waterfront. So those are three distinct areas that we're gonna be talking through this evening. And I'm gonna turn it over to Tom now to talk about the market analysis, give you some results, and then we'll get into some conversation.
Thanks, Alex. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tom Goretzky. I'm Director of Research at Moyne Associates. I'll be talking through some of the findings of the market analysis that we've conducted for the town. So just to start out, what is a market analysis? Kind of the idea here is to look at all the factors that impact what the development opportunities are in Hingham and specific to those three districts that Alex referenced. So we did kind of a comprehensive assessment of market conditions, trends, and opportunities for development in the town. We looked at demographic and economic data to identify key factors that influence the market. It's really a study of supply and demand for all the different property types that we'll be talking through in a second. And in addition to data and research, we also engaged stakeholders that are familiar with the market that can kind of complement their data and research with some market intelligence from their on-the-ground knowledge of the area. So that would be folks like developers, property owners, businesses, business associations, brokers, folks of that nature that can kind of help validate some of the research findings. So market analysis or market feasibility is one of the key pieces that make for a successful project in the community. So that's what we'll be talking about tonight. The other factors are financial feasibility, which means you might have demand for a certain project, but it has to pencil out financially for a developer. It's got to make give a potential developer or investor enough return on their investment in order to undertake it. So that's another piece of the puzzle. And then the third piece is community feasibility, where these different uses might be possible in terms of supply and demand, but they have to align with what the community has in mind, fit with the character of the town, those sorts of things. Having all three of those makes for a successful project. So part of what we're doing tonight in the second piece here will be getting some of your feedback on community feasibility. We've identified the things that are possible from a market perspective. We want to know what you'd like to see in these different areas. So the results of the market analysis, I'm going to talk through briefly the findings for each of the different property types. We've kind of assigned a high, moderate, or low market potential rating to each of them. And I'll talk through some of the findings and details here. So starting out with residential, and I'll just say these findings are kind of general to the town as a whole, and then there are some examples that are specific to certain districts, but in general, this probably isn't a surprise to anyone. There's very high demand for residential in Hingham. We've seen a lot of recent residential development, multifamily development, as well as single family. Hingham is in high demand. It's got great quality of life, great school district, transit access, easy to get to Boston. Got beautiful downtown, lots of shopping, amenities, all those things. It makes it an attractive place to live. You also have very high housing costs, which is kind of a result of that as well. You're right on the coast and have that really attractive community. Vacancy rates have been very low for apartments under 3%. rapid absorption of new units, meaning when new developments come online, they're very quickly rented out. So very low vacancy, that really speaks to that high demand for this type of use. All kinds of uses, whether it's for sale, rental, affordable housing, senior housing, all of those things have strong demand here in this community. And, you know, a concern, of course, is the affordability aspect that kind of limits workforce potential for certain industries that rely on more moderate or lower earning jobs. So workers in those positions have to commute from farther away if they can't afford to live here. So that also contributes to high demand for residential. Next is a retail development. So general retail trend, we've seen significant transformation of retail generally nationally prior to the pandemic and through the pandemic, with ongoing shifts from stores that sell goods to stores and shops that provide services and focus on experiences rather than physical goods. So that's had a lot of impacts on the way that new retail is developed. There's definitely been a big focus on kind of the quality of the destination where retail is located. Beyond just being kind of a functional or a convenient shopping center, it's a place that people want to gather, hang out, and spend time. And it needs to compete with online. So that kind of pressure from e-commerce has really shifted that landscape. Hingham's got a lot of diverse retail districts, as you know, downtown, the Shipyard, Derby Street shops. So there's really a lot of the high kind of earnings of the residents here really point to a strong retail market serving the local community and the surrounding towns. There's because there is quite a lot of retail that you have, but there's some potential for more. So we kind of rate this as moderate potential. A lot of different development types. One thing that you don't really have in Hingham is the big box retail. I know that's not something that everyone wants, but there is opportunity for that, for more kind of local serving, capture some of the spending that's currently leaking out of Hingham to big box stores and other communities. But in addition to that, there's increased demand for more unique variety of food and beverage options, those kind of browsable shops in your mixed use districts, general recreation and leisure activities, things to do type retail, and then that kind of destination aspect. Let's see, next we've got lodging. So this speaks to hotels and hospitality. This one is also rated as moderate. Hingham does not have any hotels currently, and so that's kind of a gap in the market. Certainly, there has been, there's demand for hotels with event type space where people can have gatherings, have weddings, have business type conferences, those sorts of things. The occupancy rates are strong along the Route 3 corridor, so that suggests that there is potential for additional hotels. Specifically, you could have different hotel types. Probably mid-sized type chain hotel could be supported in Hingham, likely more along the Route 3 corridor with the highway access, or a boutique hotel would probably make most sense either downtown or in the Shipyard area, playing off that walkability, access to the waterfront, interesting environment where people might want to stay either for a wedding or for business travelers that might want to mix some leisure activities, those sorts of things. So we'd say there's kind of moderate potential for lodging. Next is industrial space. So industrial sector has been quite strong nationally and in the Boston area. That's been driven by e-commerce as well, with that increase in demand for logistics and distribution center space. There's also been kind of a bit of a strengthening of manufacturing in the US in recent years. Specifically in the Boston area, there's been a lot of activity, not only in logistics, but also advanced manufacturing type facilities, high-tech manufacturing, biomanufacturing, those sorts of activities. Hingham is a little bit at a disadvantage for industrial because of its geographic location. It's not as centrally located as other areas, Metro West, areas further west, even in the Metro South, et cetera. But there is some demand, particularly adjacent to Route 3, that highway access is going to be critical for any sort of industrial space. So some specialized industrial, build-to-suit type industrial would be a fit for Route 3, and there is some continued demand for that type of space. Office space, we would probably rate this as kind of moderate to moderate to low. Office space, there's been a lot of talk about office space throughout the pandemic with the shift to remote work. Recently saw a stat nationally about, I believe it's around 28% of all work days are worked remotely. That's across all industries, across all workers. Prior to the pandemic, that was less than 5%. So, and that has leveled off. I mean, it's still kind of slipping downward, but it's not going to go back to 5%. So that's really transformed the demand for office space. And so, as Art was alluding to earlier, kind of that flight to quality trend, there's got to be a reason for people to want to go to the office. It's got to compete with working from home. So that means a successful office space needs to be in an interesting environment, has to have both in-building amenities and amenities in the surrounding neighborhood that people can easily access. Those are going to be the most successful office spaces. So incorporating office space into mixed use areas is the strongest opportunity, not only in Hingham, but in other places as well. So to the extent that office space, high quality office space, updated, renovated, new space can be integrated into these kinds of environments, there is some potential within Hingham. Again, the kind of challenged access to Hingham compared to some other locations makes it less desirable than your more centrally located suburban communities throughout the Boston metro area. But that's not to say there isn't any potential for it. So that's kind of the story with office space. And then here's the last one here, lab space. The market potential in Hingham is fairly low. There's been a building boom of lab and R&D space throughout the Boston area over the last several years. That's resulted in significant oversupply in the Boston market. That's going to take some time to absorb as that space gets filled over time. So that's kind of the metro-wide environment. So really, we're not going to see much new lab space being built in the immediate future throughout Boston. However, Hingham is also not located central to some of the lab science or bioscience hubs within the region, those being Kendall Square, Seaport, and then your more western and northern suburban communities are really where the hubs for lab space and R&D are. So it's tough for kind of a company to locate far away from other lab companies because they rely on bioscience talent. Bioscience talent tends to live in places that have access to those bioscience clusters. So it's a bit of a chicken and an egg. So not having as close of an access to that ecosystem makes it more of a challenge to try to attract that. Folks that might work in that field would probably be less likely to move close to South Shore, places like Hingham, because maybe they get the job at a Hingham lab, but if they want to switch to a new job, there aren't any other options in the area. So that makes it a consideration both for employees and businesses that rely on that very specialized talent. So again, not to say that there's zero possibility, but it would be a challenge to attract that kind of user to Hingham. So those are our use types. Here's just a quick summary of what we talked about. So just kind of range from high to low, again, we start residential's at the top, then we got kind of retail, lodging, moderate, followed by industrial and office, and then lab with the lowest market potential. And I just want to emphasize here, this is just based on market demand. This has nothing to do with what the community wants to see in Hingham. And we're going to get to that next. This is just, these are the opportunities. If the community wants to see them, this is kind of the ability from a market perspective for the town to be able to foster these types of uses. And what's next here? I think I'll invite Alex back up to talk a little bit about our SWOT here.
All right, one more data piece before we set you loose on giving us some feedback. So we did a SWOT that's in the market analysis that will be all released and public once we finalize the results. We're not going to go through bullet point by bullet point here, but a couple of things that relate to what Tom was talking about that we do want to talk about just in terms of the ability of certain use types to grow in Hingham. Certainly the cost, affordability, availability of housing across the board. And again, that's not just a Hingham specific issue, but you know, when we talk to employers all across the country and the Northeast and New England, I mean, housing is at the top of an employer's mind because they're having employees turn down jobs because they can't find housing. So obviously we're focused on economic development and businesses and jobs, but it does all at the moment tend to come back to housing. We already talked about limited competitiveness when it comes to the bioscience sphere. And that relates back to just geographically where Hingham is. It's a little bit cut off from just about half of its potential workforce just based on geography. So that certainly does have implications when it comes to attracting different size and scale of businesses. Infrastructure Art alluded to a little bit. So that is something that is certainly going to come up when we talk about on the housing side or the business development side. Infrastructure, sewer, water is going to be huge. And then just the lack of messaging overall, I'd say, around Hingham's sort of value proposition to businesses. You know, we talked a little bit about at that first meeting, you know, why is your business here? Why would you tell people to locate your business here? And there's lots of things, but what that sort of cohesive messages could be strengthened based on any one of those use types to attract a certain audience. On the positive side, on the strengths or opportunities, certainly lots to build from there. Tom had already alluded to the varied retail presence. And I think, you know, there's varying levels of success with that retail. Retail is a tough industry, certainly post-pandemic, certainly before the pandemic, but in terms of shifts and, you know, what consumers want and sort of where the norm is now, I think that is all still shifting. So still a moving target, I'd say. Certainly the direct access to a major metro has certain opportunities and challenges. When we're talking about the relatively low uniform property rate compared to some of its competitors that we looked at, certainly advantageous for potentially a commercial or industrial user. And then certainly the historic community character of Hingham, right? When you talk about how do you know that you're in Hingham and not any one of your peer communities, I think there really is something to that heritage and history throughout the town that certainly has room to grow and make a name for an even bigger name for Hingham as well in terms of the ability to attract potential business as well. So that is our data information analysis presentation. Before we get into hearing some feedback, I just want to pause for a second and see if there's any questions in the room or online.
I just had seems like a small question.
Yeah.
You talked about lodging.
Mhm.
Does that imply tourism or does that imply just people visiting other people that live here or both?
I think both is one of the things that when we talk around, where do people stay when they come to Hingham or who is coming to Hingham? Again, it's a little bit of both, that if there were lodging, then there could be more visitation, but there's low visitation, so maybe the hotels, right, are hesitant to come. But when we looked at the market data, the occupancy rates are at a level that would seem desirable for hotels. So it does seem that if there were the lodging option, that the visitation option or the visitation sector would be able to grow, and that things around, the other amenities in visitation could have potential to grow as well. Good question.
Yeah.
Sure. Clark, I think you've been made, I think you're able to speak now if you would like to ask a question.
Clark, can you hear us? Or if you're still interested in posing a question, by all means, step up.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if the consultants were aware of our sewer bond issue, which in fact, we didn't speak of this much at town meeting, will increase our capacity, at least along Route 3A, because we were running out of capacity there and we'll be putting in a larger line. But that, unfortunately, the North District is the only area in Hingham in which we have a viable sewer system if we choose to maintain it.
Mhm.
Uh,
Thanks,
So
Clark.
I've got some other things to say, but that was just the question, if they were aware that we do have this project going. And we'll be
Great.
replacing the 18-inch with a 24-inch sewer on the gravity part from Shipyard Drive to Stotter's Neck.
No, that's helpful context, and I do know that there's some larger conversations around how to address that sewer water issue. So that's certainly part of what you're bringing up is part of that solution. So thanks for bringing up that context.
Yeah, that's a fact. The other part about what we do with MWRA and trying to expand the district, or what we do in South Hingham is a real mess, because keep in mind that Rockland right now is paying fines, or they're paying fines because they're over their limit amount of water that they can put into the ground.
Mhm.
And
Well,
there is a sewer district there, but we've never done anything with it.
All right, well, that's certainly still part of the conversation as we go through some of these, and infrastructure is going to be part of what we get to in the next section.
Okay.
So thanks.
The other question was that you mentioned Route 3A as being wonderful access, which where I live, I disagree. The commuter rail, unfortunately, the stations are so poorly located that neither one could really serve anything of substance. The only really good transportation we have for workers in Hingham is the 220 bus and the ferry. And I think you underestimated the value of the ferry.
Absolutely, yeah, the ferry is a extremely unique asset in the ability to on both sides, really, for workers and employers. So that's certainly something that I think stands out for Hingham that we would want to make sure that is highlighted for opportunities and things, an asset to build on for sure.
So, and because if you did have a back office, hypothetically, within walking distance of the ferry, you can be in downtown in less than an hour reliably, as opposed to Route 3A, which is not reliable, or Route 3.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. All right, well, why don't we get to some engagement here? So we just like to use this this graphic because when we talk about putting all of these pieces together, right, we talk about the market. That's the data that tells us what has potential. Obviously, the community has to be able to buy into that or see value in any of those use types. So I want to try something out and we can just have a discussion if it doesn't work. But if people have their phones on them, all you gotta do is either go, and folks online, you can follow along and do all of this as well because it works on your phone or online, just on a desktop. You can either take a picture or, use the QR code and it'll take you to the website you need to go to. There's no logging on, there's no adding your name, no nothing. Or on your phone or on your desktop, you can go to slido.com, how it's spelled there. And you put in that code where it asks for it at the top. And then we can do some live thing. But tell me how.
Yeah.
Is that? Are we on? Good? Okay. You won't see anything yet until I go to the next slide, but I just want to make sure people have time to look at it. And if there's those that don't want to join in online, you can also have a conversation in person. Oh, and it is on the handout as well. Did you guys want a handout? Good. Well, the code and the QR code stay up on the left-hand side if for some reason you ever get disconnected. But you should be able to use it now. I just wanted to do, this is just a practice one, so you can see how the platform works. So you should have that poll on your phone now. And it's just asking the thing that I enjoy most about Hingham.
I have no active polls at the moment. So
Do you want to like log in?
it does say Hingham Strategy Public Meeting, so I'm in the right place.
That's what happened once.
You should, yeah, you don't need to log in.
Out there, it might take a minute to.
Hold on, yeah, let me take that.
There's only 10 of us in the room, you probably don't need to go through the require from us and 17 people online quite easily.
Good, that's good. I do want to, yeah, it'd be nice for the people online that should be able to use it. Let's see, can you get it to work? Okay, I have one other way to do this. I will not let technology beat me. Not today.
No, it's up. Yeah.
Okay, I can share it just online, so let me reshare my screen. Let me just get to the right question. I did that. It's coming up. Back. It's long. Tell me what's up. Okay,
Yeah, no.
okay, great. Sounds good. Okay,
There you go.
so you choose an option and then there's a little green button at the bottom to hit send. Send your answer. And everyone online can join in as well. Yeah, so people online must be doing it. And then you'll just advance to the next slide when I go on, so no need to hit next or anything.
John has his hand raised. I don't know if he's got a technical question or whatnot, but.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay, John Borger, 53 Lafayette Avenue. If it's of any helpful if it's helpful to you, I'm online. I see the 4 poll questions. They're displaying percentages. There's no way for me to interactively participate in the poll. I can't move the sliders. So I'm not sure if that was what you intended, but it's that part of the site doesn't seem to be working.
So on the screen that's shown right now, you can't interact with it, but if you go to the slido.com and input that's where you're able to, like, you would individually take the poll, and then the results, like what we're seeing on the screen now, is those results.
I see. So the sliders are the results. And so
Exactly.
you have to select one of 4, the thing I most enjoy. Okay, I see it. Thanks.
Exactly, yep.
Yeah, gotcha.
All right, well, let's go on to the next one here and see how we do. But neighborhood friendliness comes to the top for the thing that I most enjoy about Hingham. So the next set of questions are specifically for South Hingham, North Rockland area. So we're saying just in this district for the next set of questions. So the next one that you should have on your screen, either online or on your phone, it's gonna ask you to rank from the list below. It's gonna ask you to rank which outcomes are most important when it comes to considering potential development. So you've got 9 options there. There's lots of ways to look at the impact of development, and there's 9 of them listed here. And so what you do is you take each little box and move it to the top, and you'll see it numbered out. And 1 would be most important, 9 would be least important to you.
Well, to rank them all.
Yes,
And again, this is specific to South
South
Hingham, North Rockland.
yes. You can see it, I think it's cut off on screen, but at the top I can see that there's multiple people doing it right now. There you go. So what we're seeing is the live responses, basically as more and more people answered. Reordering them as people answer, basically, for what is most to least important. Yeah, go ahead.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
Is it, given there's 17 people online and a handful of people here,
Yeah,
is this something that could be made available, on a website where it could get blasted out to the town as a whole? More people participate, or has it already?
it will be. Yeah, yep. So the town's got an economic development website, and then tomorrow morning, the survey version of this essentially is publicly available. We're gonna say for the next week or so. I would love to get additional feedback from the town.
Awesome.
All right, well, let's look. So it looks like most people have responded who are gonna respond. So let's just look at top three even. So generate tax revenue for the town. Again, we're just in South Hingham, North Rockland. Generate tax revenue, minimize stress on infrastructure, existing infrastructure, and then preserve open or green space. At the bottom is preserving Hingham's historical legacy. That seems to make sense with just dealing with this particular district. Anyone in the room have any comments, additional feedback on that?
The comment I would have to
Yeah.
South Hingham
Yeah,
is, the preservation of open space in South Hingham, let's add all that. There's a reason that we have businesses in that region, is because of Route 3. So you're bringing people in from the communities that surround us, Route 3. 3A, you're limited to the communities, Hall has it maybe a little bit away, so it's much smaller there.
mhm,
The biggest bang for our buck, we talked about this in 2009, is South Hingham. The little nuance about the Rockland, I'm unsure about. Improving the infrastructure getting off of the 228 exit, I guess, in front of Home Depot, as opposed to going through the industrial park, which they don't seem to really want to participate. So it seems like when we talked about this in 2009, to improve businesses coming to Hingham and the tax dollars that are associated with that. South Hingham is where we need to focus our effort on that. And then the other ones, again, that may come up, but I just was surprised by that open space.
yeah,
It can't be much, what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And where we have one of the largest state parks in our community, we have lots of open space that is underutilized. As opposed to Fort Lee and South Hingham,
mhm. All right, well,
and the naval base on the other side.
let's look at, so this relates back to what Tom was talking about and the market uses. So what you would see on your screen now is a list of general types of businesses, I'd say, that would apply to those land uses that we talked about. So these are types of businesses that, based on the market analysis, would have the best potential to succeed in South Hingham, North Rockland. And what you're able to do is choose up to 5 of those uses of the ones that you would prefer to see grow. And spoiler for the next question is going to be which ones you would prefer to not see grow. So these are the ones that you really think are a good fit, that you might frequent, that are a community fit, that you think would be well received by the community. You don't have to choose 5, but you can choose up to 5 and then hit that green button that sends the results in. And we'll see the results on screen. Oh, we might have a home for the hotel. Hotel, medical office space. Oh, all right, it's jumping all over the place. Sorry. Anything wrong? Slide change. Okay. Seeing, okay,
Will you share these results too?
yeah,
Oh.
yeah, they'll be part of the final report and things.
And you're displaying it as much of, as not a big box. Are there any percentages on the residential?
Yeah. So let's look at the top one. So let's see, we've got 11 responses. So that's some people online then. So the mid-sized chain hotel, medical office space, that includes a range of sort of outpatient type of facilities, and then indoor health fitness. So those are your top 3. Let's see, residential, sort of mid-range, low end, and down at the, and single family didn't get any responses here.
Yeah, question.
So one of the things that I sort of struggle with a little bit on this is, and especially since you, including North Rockland in this, I think there are 3 hotel, motel, depending on how you want to define it. Right there in Rockland, right on the other side of the border.
Yeah,
The question, or a question is, how are they doing? Right, like, is that, and if they would do better, if there was more investment, why aren't those chains investing it, right? I mean, do we have a market test already for lodging in South Hingham by those 3 properties? Right there, or not, and I don't know whether you know from your conversation with Rockland, whether
Yeah.
those are crushing it or, you know, on their last legs or what, but it seems like we would learn a bit from that experience.
Yeah, and it'll be kind of a matter of finding an operator that kind of fills a gap that the other ones aren't operating precisely. And as I mentioned before, the occupancy rate, for this kind of submarket is strong, it's over 80%. Usually hotel operators look for 70% or higher to be interested. And so that suggests that there is some demand. We didn't go as deep as to say exactly what type of hotel, but that does suggest that, you know, some type of hotel could be absorbed in the market.
and Allison over in Rockland has had some comments about the hotel activity on her side as well. So there's additional context there that would need to be further investigated to make sure that it really was a viable, or the right operator, I guess, was found to be a viable use.
Well, I think you mentioned too, like a destination for weddings or events, like I don't think those 3 hotels are they're not for that.
Well, one of them certainly is not.
Yeah, and I think.
Yeah.
That's
The
the
built-in.
mid-size branded hotel, it's a little different from what Robin's offering.
Mhm. All right, well, we've seen that's what you want to grow. Next question, same exact list of uses, is the 5 uses that you prefer not to see? And again, you don't have to choose 5, just up to 5 you can choose for those that you would not want to see grow in South Hingham, North Rockland.
I don't think I'm
Should this be coming
Yeah,
up?
mine has enough.
Yeah, I think we need the,
I'm still seeing the results of the last one.
That's good, if you see the results, it might just be a delay then, when we go back and do it. Good,
While people are
yeah,
filling that in, I like the fact that you have, you know, one of your least favorite most of the time. One of the visions that I always had for South Hingham is, you know, it's close proximity to South Shore Hospital. We have an aging population. My mother's 91. It's almost, no, it's not impossible, but it's very difficult to find space for people that have various types of needs, either memory care, nursing facility or assisted facility. Boy, I'd love to see more of that in South Hingham.
mhm,
Because that is a cohort which is expanding. Doesn't use the roadways too much.
yeah,
And we have a number of places along 53 that are doing spectacular in that field. So I was surprised we didn't have it as one of the options, but you know, that would be something that I would tend to believe would do well. Campuses along South Hingham for that.
Yeah, it's
Some
certainly
other areas in town, which is more difficult.
Yeah, certainly was not an intentional omission. That's
Oh,
what-
I think it was, it just.
Yeah, no, that, I mean, there was
That's
definitely
why we're
strong
meeting, you know.
potential in the market.
People are out there already.
that seems to come up.
There we go.
Two ratings online.
But you can do while we're waiting for these. Come in. Is it John that's able to speak now?
Yes, I have a comment along the lines, I completely agree with the gentleman who just commented, and I didn't see an opening to make this kind of a comment, so I'll sneak it in here. And that is, you know, as I look at the sectors of the economy that you talked to us about initially, the heavy hitters don't seem to be there. And I think we've hit on a little bit, healthcare, and the gentleman was just speaking to that, nursing care, memory care, that certainly, but something a little bit more intensive than simply small professional offices, perhaps rehab centers. We're not going to put a hospital probably in Hingham, but urgent care, I think someone mentioned. Government, that's a huge sector of the economy. We don't seem to have any, prospects for competing for government facilities. I mean, we'd all love to see the RMV die and go to heaven in the Derby Industrial Park. That would be great. But we'll get in line with all the other towns that love to see that, especially Quincy, who currently has a big installation. Education. I don't know if there are any opportunities in education. We're looking at over the next 20 years, 20 to 30 years, major development in the field of electrification of buildings. And that means a whole range of opportunities, one of which is HVAC, insulation, those kinds of businesses. And I think the industrial area, the industrial park is ideal for those kinds of small to mid-sized shops. Let's see, what else? Just quickly. We've seen an exodus in Hingham over the last 10 or 15 years of outfits that are in the marine retail sector. It's really difficult to buy things for boats now in Hingham. I guess most people are going online. We used to have a lot more options, if we could get a West Marine to locate here, that would be terrific. It's near a major shipping center in the industrial park. That would be great. So just some ideas, just some, sectors that I thought maybe, you'd already thought about and dismissed because of the barriers, but are worth at least a mention. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks, John. Those are some good distinctions. And I guess when we say medical office space, we certainly would. Medical office space would tend to include things like urgent care and doctor's offices. So there is some of that additional healthcare, but your points are well taken in terms of just the specificity around some of those areas and what they need. And then was there one more hand? Clark Fraser. Clark, I think you should be on if you've got a question.
Unmute. Okay. Can you hear me? Clark Fraser, 50 Bonnie Briar Circle. I live in the other end of Hingham, so I'll start there. And one of the things that I dread doing is going to South Hingham anytime because of either school buses, Route 228 or whatever. Unfortunately, South Shore Health is a major facility in Norwell, and I have to go down there from time to time. I wish there was something in this end of Hingham. I do think that there's no transit there. It's all highway oriented. The street layout is terrible. Uh, Basically, the 228 ramp should be ripped out and replaced with slip ramps so that the roads enter and leave at a straight line on both sides of 228 if that's if that's possible, and that would free up an enormous amount of land, some of which is in Hingham. We also need another road crossing into South Hingham because I hate to have to drive through either Weymouth or Rockland or whatever town it is to get to the medical places that are in South Hingham. I think the street layouts are terrible and need to be accessed. The other thing I wanted to say for some time is we have like gas stations and auto dealerships right across from Accord Pond, which is town water, and we need to be either moved to MWRA water or find a way to keep those types of uses away from our aquifer. And I've already said that, yeah, there is a sewer district down there the town has, but that nothing has ever been done. And I know Kirk is in the room. He can talk about it also, should he choose so to do so. But again, street layout terrible, access is terrible from this end of Hingham, so I would rather see I'd rather see more amenities for people living in north part of Hingham. It's really bad to have to go to there or to Hanover to shop or to Braintree. That's even worse. And the other thing I want to remind you about is that as long as Braintree has the parcel where Grossman's used to be, and as long as that's undeveloped, anybody who wants to build a major office complex or anything would probably go there first because it's served by commuter rail, red line, and highway, in preference to our highway only access in South Hingham and Rockland, with also limited infrastructure. Thanks.
Thanks, Clark. All right, I'm just looking at the time here. I want to keep this moving because we have 2 other districts to get to. So just to summarize, this was the one that was preferred or not preferred uses. Quick service food and beverage at the top, multifamily, and those big box or medium box retail chains coming in at number 3 there. One more question for South Hingham that I hope comes up. So there should see 4 options. And this is going to be the same across the board. This is asking you to consider sort of impacts of development and your feelings. This is one where you just choose one. So which of the statements best captures your attitude towards new development? Again, we're still just in South Hingham, North Rockland. We've had 10 or 12 typically responsible, so we've got 10. So, all right, at the top. I support most uses of development in the district that would result in significant tax-based growth and job creation, even if they come with some negative impacts.
So yeah, this is getting at kind of the trade-offs between development and not developing, right? So with development, potential for tax-based growth and job creation, but of course it will come with some impacts. If you don't develop, then you're not gonna get the tax-based growth and job creation. So it's kind of asking you to say how you kind of view this. So it seems like, folks are generally open to some growth that has that tax base and job creation component and would accept some negative impacts.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's a question, maybe not to put you on the spot, Art, but I think it's maybe a question for you, because while not entirely binary, they're not necessarily conjoined. The idea of tax growth, revenue growth, and job creation. And I guess the question from a town perspective is, which one's first in your hearts, right? I mean, because, and we went through a lot of this conversation during the master plan, right? There was a lot of focus from the consultant side about, well, we need to create all kinds of job opportunities for people in Hingham. Versus, as you laid out at the beginning, we got a big budget gap that we need to solve. And the approach might be different if the focus is more on tax growth than on job growth. So where in your headspace or the town's focus, they're not tied, I'm sure, but where would you, as our leadership, put the thumb on the scale?
I'm not putting my thumb on any scale, just let me just say.
I apologize.
Well, it's a fair question.
Maybe I just pose it as sort of a broader holistic question for the rest of this effort.
It's a fair question, and I think I want to share a little bit based on my experience in economic development. Our paths have crossed, and we've worked in different settings, and the South Shore is unique. in my experience, in terms of its ability to support commercial development. There are challenges here that don't exist in other parts of the state. I think what we heard are some of the challenges. I think we know the state in laying out its economic development plan has identified some sectors that our market research is showing there isn't a lot of alignment. Or we would have to accept the trade-off that we were going to grow some of those sectors. We would have to invest a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of investment to set conditions to attract, for example, a life sciences company, for example, a clean tech company that's beyond the startup stage. What that points to is what the market study is pointing to is one of our competitive strengths is the nature of our workforce and the amount of our disposable income that's here. So, and that's pointing to alignment with one state priority, which is housing. Is there a way we can leverage that to create more commercial value, create more value for the community, not just from a revenue perspective, but a quality of place perspective? And the last thing I will say is that I know this question is posing this trade-off of growth versus impact. I think we all know the reality is once we're clear about what we want, we will have to, going forward, seek partnerships with those who see opportunities that are aligned with our own. And we know infrastructure is a challenge, and we know those costs aren't necessarily easily borne by the town alone. And we would be looking for an outcome where we're minimizing those impacts and creating something that's of value to the community. So just go back to the start of your question, Gordon. This is a different place. I'm trying to make sense of it. As an economic development professional, I'm finding that I'm learning a lot. And I'll go back to the start point. We cannot be successful unless we protect the town's character. And what I want to be sure that we do going forward is that we identify a target set that we can have a comfort level with and figure out how to set conditions that will attract investment while also address what we need to keep this community as special as it is now. Does that help?
Sure, yeah, right, yeah, no, I think it's, you know, you're tapping into what is likely a through line for the remainder of the project.
I mean, that's the big question, right? And that there obviously is a lot of nuance than, you know, more than 4 answers is, right? It's somewhere in between there and all of them at the same time. For the purposes of time, I do want to keep moving, and I'm gonna skip that first ranking question and just go to the one that, so we moved to downtown Hingham. And this is the list of uses that are market viable, starting with the 5 that you would prefer to see more of in downtown Hingham. It's beautiful.
While people are filling out, it gives me opportunity to talk. May I?
Of course, go ahead.
Yeah, the downtown, that was built on a era that has passed, right, the train. And so it's gonna be difficult to promote that business district, to expand it, because it has limited space and it's not designed for the type of retail establishments that we're familiar with and expect nowadays. So I like the fact you had boutique up there and special destinations, because that's what the downtown should be. It's walkable. And so, you know, one of the things that's kind of cool about Quincy right now, it's got every damn restaurant in the world there. And so, you know, for that area to have more destination for food service, to me, it is a logical expansion of that area. But it's hard. I'd like to see more residential in that area, because that's, you know, it's a lovely place to live. But I just think as a business component, you know, a small number of available spaces, and, you know, that seems to be the one-off, the individual offices, the medical, the trainers that you put in there earlier.
Yeah,
But it's probably the hardest of the three areas to pull increased economic development out of, because it is not set up currently for what people do. It was, but it's not now. And
yeah,
Clark brought that up, the train stations. I mean, they're hard to bring this in, to, bring people in by train to go to our businesses. Wow, that's difficult. From its location, they're built for commuting in mind,
Mhm.
not for the reverse of bringing people in. So
Right.
downtown's a tough one.
And it's the commute, that West Hingham spot though is like less than a mile away from downtown with sidewalks. I know it's not ideal.
Can't walk.
I don't
You can't do that.
totally disagree. Really? Why? It has sidewalks, no? It's,
different.
it's okay, it's, yeah, it's,
Walking
I
as an
understand.
exercise or walking as a means of transporting the material that you purchase back to where you live, I mean. That's what we need to talk about.
yeah.
I mean, connectivity, yeah, sort of.
It's a hard spot.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's see. So, I mean, to your point, small retail shopping boutiques, full service sit downs. Entertainment, okay, boutique hotel pops up here too. All right,
Look at that one, 83 in the restaurants everywhere.
let's see anything that is not preferred. Let's see if it came up. Yeah. Anything that would not be a good fit for them.
Oh, this is not.
Yes.
Okay.
May I say something while you was quiet? I think that relative to South Hingham, to hear that the impacts on 228 of development in South Hingham would have an adverse effect on the center, on the square, with traffic. And that's the big problem for Hingham is Route 228. And to that end, there should be a shuttle from the ferry to the square, especially in the summer, because people do ride the ferry to come down to Hingham.
Yeah, we talked a bit about that in the October meeting. All right, what is popping up is not preferred. Quick service food and beverage, personal care, and small scale multi-family residential. Was there any residential on the? No residential preferred, so residential, even small scale multi-family was not preferred downtown.
But a lot.
There's no space to do
Yeah,
it. It shouldn't even be up there.
Variability in the results here.
yeah,
No, that's more than 50%.
yeah. All right, I'm gonna keep moving and move right to the shipyard, and we're gonna do the same thing for the shipyard. Check and see. These should be in the shipyard, the 5 uses that you would prefer to see. Maybe it doesn't time out. And then we're gonna have to go ahead and wrap up shortly here.
Why are there so many vacant stores at the shipyard? Retail?
Big boxes is having a tough time. I mean, regionally,
I mean, did
nationally.
they close during pandemic and not reopen? Is that?
That's part of it. And shipyard is tough because of its geographic location. Being on the coast, it kind of cuts in half the trade area within a short drive.
Yeah.
So if you compare that to like South Hingham or, areas in Braintree or Weymouth, it's within a 10-minute drive, you have a lot larger population that can access it. So while the shipyard is interesting from a kind of sense of place perspective, it's got some walkability, it's got some interesting stores. It's just tough from a market standpoint to be able to draw in enough consumers to really make it a top location for retail. So you probably see a lot of retailers going there not hitting their sales and then moving to a location that's better.
How is
for-
the theater doing?
That I'm not sure about.
Yeah,
I'm not sure about the theater.
yeah. Yeah. You don't, all right, are you
I
saying?
don't have the answer to that.
You don't have
I
it?
like the movie, it's fair.
It seems to me, I mean, besides the fact, it looks to me like there's an awful lot of residential, you know, right there, and also on Beale Street. People come to the Talbot outlet store, okay? Or Old Navy, in other words, you know, a destination popular store
Mhm.
will, I think, attract people from Weymouth or wherever. Every retailer is dealing with online. But I mean, I don't know this, but I'm just assuming that there are some retail things that people turn on for.
Absolutely, yeah. There's destination, the outlets is
Yeah.
actually a pretty strong market across the board
Right.
right now, yeah.
Yeah, like Shipyard, if it had more of that kind of restaurant, kind of hangout type places. That destination aspect to events, you know, things to do, those sorts of things. I think that could strengthen it and kind of have more of a magnetic impact. As it is now, it's mostly serving Hingham. You don't have as many people come in from outside the town. You have grocery stores, you have Old Navy, those usually aren't drawing to more than like 10-15 minutes away.
I don't know.
Can I disagree with that? The ferry does attract people. And the one thing that really needs to be done in the shipyard is get the MBTA parking made into a structure with maybe housing on top. More housing in that area would lead to better stores. And that's one of the few places in Hingham that could take more housing without impacting somewhere else. And as I mentioned early on, that's one of the reasons why it was helpful to, for the new sewer project to expand the capacity of the sewer going by the shipyard.
Like we had a little bit of some. I mean, relatively small amount of support for housing there, but yes, to your point, I mean, there's a lot of that parking lot does take up quite a bit of potential development area. But the one that's coming to the top for preferred use is boutique hotel or restaurant, medical office space. And let's quickly do what you would prefer not to see in the shipyard. Okay. Thank you. As you're doing that, I'll just say, so it sounds like this will go up tomorrow online, the digital version. And it'll be pushed out on social media and all the usual channels. For anyone that couldn't be here tonight, please feel free to pass it along.
One of the things I was gonna say is, I don't know how they're doing, but at one time, Portsmouth, New Hampshire, you know, seacoast place.
Yeah.
Tremendous number of restaurants and so forth, but they used to have a pretty vibrant cultural activity, outdoor summer activity,
Mhm.
you know, in the Prescott Park and so forth. And I don't know, is there any activity like that at the shipyard? You know, you're at the waterfront, there is restaurants, is there music, is there outdoor theater? Is there space for it? You know, I don't know, but.
There's an event series that's in the summertime, but
Uh-huh.
it's not the same scale and it's not integrated. Just thinking about Portsmouth, I've got my eyes on Prescott Park, which is
Yeah.
really like ground zero for like the outdoor scene.
Mhm.
But there are nearby theaters and there are plenty of like nearby restaurants and very walkable setting. It's a little bit. There's a lot more there. It's a lot more integrated,
Mhm.
but your point's clear.
Yeah, it wasn't always that way though. Portsmouth.
Oh,
was a
I'm
pretty
old enough to
edgy
remember
place some decades ago.
All right, well, at the top of not preferred is more the big box, quick service and. Coming in for a quick third, the mid-scale multifamily. So 3 to 4 stories-ish, but again, there's quite a bit of variation here. because of time, and Tom and I will stick around if anyone wants to chat anymore, but I just want to be respectful of people's time in the room and online. Again, this will be available digitally. It's gonna be a very similar version, but we didn't get to all the questions, so please feel free to fill that out and send it in. We'll have it up for a week or so. Our plan with all of this information is to take it with the market information, work with staff and leadership and really figure out what that plan forward is, and then move to present to the select board at the end of January with the final plan and make some decisions about the roadmap from there. I don't know if there's anything else you want to close with for the group.
I just want to say that I recognize this isn't easy. We're revisiting some issues that have been talked about for some time, maybe decades. I think if there's a path forward to be found, I think the timing is good. I think I have something to offer in that regard. But I want to do it in such a way that it works for you, works for the community, and sets conditions for a great Hingham years into the future, so. We're wrestling with some tough issues. They're not new issues. I'm pretty good at moving through them and getting to the end. I look forward to doing that with you, and you'll be hearing more in the coming weeks. I'll just say with that, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.